We want to see reduced violence. We want to see humanitarian access. And then when we see that to everyone's satisfaction, we'll establish the Joint Implementation Center. And we want to see, as a result after that, we want to see, obviously, Assad's air forces not flying in those areas. But as we've said all along, we said in Geneva, and we've said since Geneva, if we don't get there, if we don't get to the arrangement being fulfilled, then there'll be no arrangement. There'll be no JIC. And what we agreed to in Geneva won't happen. So it's not about carrots and sticks. It's not about forcing Russia one way or another. Russia they have decisions to make about the influence that they have on Assad and the degree to which they're going to use it or not. And if they choose not to use that influence, or if they apply it and it has no effect, then the arrangement doesn't come into being. And we're back to, regrettably, where we have so long been, which is innocent civilians being barrel bombed and gassed.
John, let me just follow up on the humanitarian aid. Now, UN sources say that these trucks have no UN markings, for instance, that the UN has hired many drivers that have no licenses, no ID, no passports, that they're refusing to sort of delineate which trucks are which are really carry humanitarian aid and so on. I wonder if you have a response to that, because this seems to be what is holding the aid from going through. I mean, of course, there are, there's violence going on, but also these logistics are not taken care of. If they are not, why not?
I haven't seen reports that we don't have driver's licenses on these guys. Say the Secretary spoke to Stefan de Mistura today, and we know that that there are trucks that are waiting to go in, and the UN is supervising that process. I won't speak for the UN in terms of accreditation of drivers and vehicles. That's them to speak to. But we know those trucks are ready. They're loaded up, and they're ready to go. And even if we weren't talking about the arrangement, which obviously called for sustained humanitarian access, let's just for a second pretend we weren't talking about that. Those trucks should be going in, and that aid should be getting delivered. With or without the arrangement that was arrived at in Geneva. And it's the regime that is blocking that movement, the regime. And again, that was one of the reasons why it was important for the Secretary to talk to Foreign Minister Lavrov.
Sorry, it's not only the regime, but the local committee, the local council. There is something called the local council in eastern Aleppo that is also preventing or not agreeing to these trucks going through.
I'm not aware of that.
Okay.
What I'm aware of is that these trucks, you talk about going through, they're not even in the country.
No, I understand. No, they are.
They're not even in the country. And it is the regime that's blocking.
They have not consented. Let's put it this way.
Well, again, I don't have that report. I'm not disputing it. I just don't have that report. I
do
do know, however,
right,
that those trucks are being prevented entry into the country from the regime.
Okay, but let me follow up on a couple of things on the Castello Road, because it has historically been the main artery for supplies to the rebel forces in terms of arms and so on, foreign fighters going through and so on.
Yeah.
So the regime has always had sort of a bit of a suspicions on that. Do you feel that the Syrian government has some sort of a right in saying that we want to ensure that no foreign fighters, no equipment is going through these trucks and so on? From their point of view, do they have that right?
Well, look, rather than say they have the right or they don't, the part of the arrangement that dealt with Castello Road, because we agree it is a main artery of sustenance to Aleppo, and because it is a main artery, it has been used by one side or the other for other purposes than getting food, water, and medicine to the Syrian people. That is why, as part of the arrangement, parameters were set about opening up that road, properly putting a mechanism into place to properly monitor traffic so that people who wanted to leave could leave safely. Food, water, and medicine that needed to get in could get in. And again, I mean, I've seen press reporting about um, bulldozers on the road today, and then regime troops moving in, moving out. I'm not going to get into a tactical blow-by-blow of what the road looks like right now, because whatever I say is probably not going to be correct in a little bit of time. So all I can tell you is we want to see the agreements regarding Costello Road, the ones that both Foreign Minister Lavrov and the Secretary talked about in Geneva. We want to see that put in place.
And lastly, my last one on this. Do you have any information on the Syrian army pulling back like 2 kilometers yesterday and then going back?
Yeah, I just said, in my answer to you, I've
So
seen
you
those.
confirmed that they did?
No, I cannot. I said I've seen press reports about that, but I'm not in a position to confirm tactical movements by small units. I wouldn't even do that for the U.S. military. I'm certainly not going to do that to try to characterize what Syrian regime forces are doing. Again, what we want to see is we want to see the proper amount of access to get the food, water, and medicine to the people in Aleppo, and for those that want to be able to leave and leave safely, so that they can do that.
What the Russians are also saying is that the reason that these purported moves happened with the Syrian troops was because the U.S.-backed rebels have been violating the ceasefire, and that most of the violations of the ceasefire are because of these moderates, and that it's the responsibility of the U.S. to get them to lay down the arms.
I don't think we need to be reminded of our responsibilities with respect to the opposition. We know very well, and the Secretary has spoken to that. And as I think my colleague said here, even as yesterday, we acknowledge that there have been, over the last several days, there have been acts of violence committed by all sides here. We acknowledge that. In fact, even in Geneva, before the arrangement technically kicked off, the Secretary acknowledged that that there were going to be things happening that we didn't want to see. Obviously, we'd love to see no violence, but we recognized even before that there would be some. And as I said, we've acknowledged that that all sides here have probably not in full committed to no violence, and we want to see all sides continue, or we want to see all sides comply with it, and to keep the levels down.
And do you have